I don't care about
I know. I heard steps.
that. She's fun. All right. Hi, everyone. It's Sorithkin from Montier, and I'm here with Duke Craven from Aytonville, who has reigned 6 times, is a Pelican, a Lion, a Light of Aytonville. And I don't think I've ever seen so many Queen ciphers and King sigils or whatever those are. I was just like blown away when I was looking at your OP entry. So you're gonna have to tell me about what all that is, but
Okay.
you've watched before, so we start with the origin story. So if you want to start there, that would be great. Oh, look at that. That's sweet.
My support team.
Come in and go, liar.
she was just commenting about the sigils and ciphers. So
Which one?
That I had
There's so
quite a few
many.
of them in there.
Oh, we have a competition.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah. Yeah, I'll explain what they are. Yeah, it drives her nuts. I'm such a okay. But anyhow, where were we? I'm sorry, my wife was distracting.
No, that's fine. We're at your origin story. So
The origin story. Yeah. Let's see, which one was I gonna go? No, actually, mine was pretty typical. In high school and when I was younger, one of my best friends, his parents did science fiction stuff and conventions, and Phoenix, right? And so there was a lot of people that did both, and so he was kind of connected that way. And when we got out of school, I joined the National Guard, so I went off to AIT for almost a year. And when I came back, he's like, "We're going to do this SCA thing." I'm like, "Okay, what is it? What are we doing?" He's like, "Well, we're going to make armor and we're going to be mercenaries." I'm like, "Mercenaries? Well, that sounds freaking cool." So, we acquired some blue plastic barrels and used a jigsaw, cut them out, nut and bolted them, We actually used a toaster oven to shape the knees and elbows and everything with it, to make this skeletal suit of armor. And I mean, it was just blue all over. It was terrible. But, so we did that so we could go fight at Australia War, right? And so we had our first Australia War. And well, actually, no, we did God, my memory is not like Uther's. I have to sit there and I start talking and I remember my shit. But
I think that's normal. So
yeah. Well, I'm like, how do you remember shot from 1991? I don't remember what I had for dinner last week, right? So, but yeah, we went to Ayton Outlands War is what it was the first war I ever went to, and that was in 1987. Okay. And we went to that, and which was a whole long story in itself. Of we showed up a day early for the event, picked the wrong camping spot. It was taped off with caution tape, so they thought it was like a warning for like safety, and they decided it was the best spot in camping. So we camped there, found out it was the Outlands Royal encampment that we camped in. And they, it was the whole ordeal. It was kind of funny, we're all fringe. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. These people hate us already,
They didn't welcome you in and say, "We have a spot for you right there."
Well, their royals were awesome because they found another spot, so don't worry about it, which I understand now is, like I been in the same shoes. But yeah, there was, we had challenges and stuff to fight in the field, and I'm like, I fought 2 times, the most hard fighting I had was my friend hitting me with a stick as hard as he can and going, "This is what it's like." I'm like, okay. But it was an interesting beginning to the SCA, and we kind of like intermittently merged because Australia makes it easy, right? And you can be a household and all you do is Australia War. It's kind of like that Pennsic aspect there. And so that's what we did for a couple of years. And what happened is I decided to take it serious when we were fighting a res battle at Australia War. And me and my buddy were walked so many times from the fighting line to res point. I remember vividly at one point, like I do remember some stuff. We walked back and I'm like, we really need to go to the Wednesday practice to get better because I'm tired of like not living, So started going to practice then, and my buddy, found a deal where we merged for a night, and he squared the night, and I'm like, I'll square the same night. I don't even know the guy, and so I ended up meeting him. And like, okay, I'm a squire, and then pretty much they went from there, and the usual story, going to as many practices as possible. And Phoenix was a hot spot, like the guy said earlier. They weren't lying when they say like melee season. When I was Royal Night Marshal, you could get 40 guys aside meleeing in a weekday on a Wednesday, and you would do that for weeks, and it's mind blowing compared to now where I go to an event and we're like, we have 5 guys to melee each other before Australia War. It's like, hey, this is a good night, Yeah, but it was very interesting at that time, because that was pretty much the 90s, because I got knighted in 95, and I was serious for like 3 years, really, just, but I had the opportunity and the time to go. I worked graveyard, so go to practice, go to work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when you started out with melees, were you fighting sword and shield, or were you doing spear?
Oh yeah, I'm a small little guy. I know I look bigger on camera, but I could hide behind the Aiden here, 24 inches wide, shoulder to knee, shield, and yeah, definitely sword and shield. Plus also kind of like culturally, that was the thing. You start the guys out on sword board, they go out there, and next thing you know, you see the guy that's commander, he's got a spear or a glaive. It's pretty much what it is. So started out there, and that was my single style in the first place too. It's like, okay, I like this shield thing. It was, the thing to do. That's what everybody did. I'm a follower, I guess.
Did you start out with a center mount? Because you fight with a center mount. I've seen you fight.
Yeah. No, it was a strap heater. I mean, what was interesting at the time is really predominantly, I mean, you're talking like 95% of people that were actively fighting fought with a strap shield. There was only like a couple of guys. One of the guys fought a buckler because he was primarily a glaive fighter, or they fought 2-sword. So that was like the common norm, when you and it was in fashion too, because like the guys went in crown were Trelawn and Brian Tarragon, and I mean it seemed like they were back to back all the time, but they weren't. But what those guys fought, that's what everybody else fought. And then center grips didn't really show up into use in fashion until probably, God, I would almost say like the late 90s, if not early 2000s, because Duke Aaron started carrying, using one. I picked one up from California, one of the Dukes out there, that he was every Potrero war, this war they have in Maine, Caid, was this fighting event we went to, which was hardcore, great event. And I fought the same Duke Dietrich, all the time, so that was like my yearly appraisal, and so I would show up there and he had this round shield and I tried it out. I'm like, holy shit, this is so much fun. I'm like, I ditched the heater because the heater, it felt like being left-handed. You had, shot this way or a wrap or a leg wrap, where when you got around, you can go like this and go like this, so it was, yeah. So, but that's where I evolved over to that. And then I couldn't go back to heater because I kept sombrering with a heater, and that's a really bad idea.
It doesn't give you as much flexibility as the round to get back into good position.
Yeah, and your ribs are really exposed, and I hate getting hurt.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we skipped a lot by going down the path, but we'll go back. So who was the knight you squired to?
I squired to Count Elric Ap Moray was his SCA name, and then he was actually a good knight. He was going through some life stuff at some point too, and I kind of fostered to my ex-wife's knight, Sir Viscount Eldred, but me and him got along really well, and we were all hanging out all the time. And he actually influenced me a lot on the philosophy and thought process around fighting and improving and stuff. He wasn't like a formal teacher or anything, but the way he thought, he was a video gamer, and in his mind, the way it worked, really worked for me, but it also kind of gave me a good perspective of fighting. And he was also 5 foot tall. And so, him using his size was such a, extreme example, so it was kind of interesting, but he kind of fostered me on and helped me with the fighting. My knight was actually really good, and like he was a pelican, he did service, and I think that really ingrained a lot into me of, you get what you put into things, and also the household concept too that he had, so but yeah, he was my knight, and then moved, had a foster for a while and got knighted and ran loose.
So what was the methodology that your foster knight ingrained into you?
Well, I guess really what it was is, the perspective you look at it in the fighting, because a lot of times, practice would be, you go hit a pell, you hit flat snaps, offsides, and there's no answer of why you're doing this. It's like, hey, get your hand up higher so you're serving the platters. Do you have the flat snap? And it's like, well, it really doesn't work that way, you know. And then really, like, he talked about range and position to things, not in a formal sense, but the perspective was, you're trying to solve this problem, and the things you do within that problem are more organic than the set kata, and that shifted gears really actually helped me out a lot because, I didn't understand where, like, some guys are like, yeah, I'm going to hit that guy in the leg, I'm going to hit the guy there. And it's like, I'm like, how does that work? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. Right. And then he took this perspective of, it's like, well, I'm going to do these things to get closer to the guy. I'm going to get into this position so I can throw to that side of the body. So it was more of that, really what most people do anyways that fight for a long time. They figure out, like, oh, okay, I do that. And it was just his perspective of how to look at it, I guess. I don't have like the greatest words for it. I'm sorry.
No. I think that's really key though, because I think a lot of times people forget to tell newer people the why. And the why is so important because it makes you understand that there's a reason why that's effective and why you're doing it and what it folds into, because everything's connected, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like to me, like, I've had a lot of office jobs at manufacturers, and so you have this global view and you have to look at the whole thing. So when a product comes rolling out, the guy building it and the engineer designing it really need to have some connection. Otherwise you have something that doesn't work or has a lot more problems or gets more expensive to build. And so for me, it works better having the whole picture.
Was your foster knight a lefty as well?
No, he was a terrible right-hander.
Okay.
No, he was a good fighter. I'm just messing.
Yeah. So while you were an unbelt, were you fighting in crown tourneys and doing all the tourneys, or were you focused on melee or?
Well, focus wise, like, melee is a very interesting thing here because of the numbers, right? You just naturally get exposure, so your helmet time increases every week, and when you have so many people, you have a lot more good people, and so that gap you kind of just go through that process, right? Just naturally, it's survival is where it really boils down to. But on the the singles, I would fight in the Queen's Champion when we had it. And at the time, we were also, Artemisia was part of the kingdom at that time. So half the time you would be, you'd have one Queen's Champion, because, it was very rare that you would go to Artemisia and travel that far to go fight in Queen's Champion, right? Which I know is a foreign concept to Antarians and other people in larger kingdoms. Like, why wouldn't you go there? It's like, well, it's not 6 hours away. It's more. We're weak.
All relative.
But, yeah, it is relative, and it's kind of funny when you look at that culture mindset we have. But so you would have that, but we also had the principality, so it's like always fighting in the Princess's Champion. So I fought in those. I fought in only a couple of crowns, but we had crown requirements where you had to have an office, and your heraldry had to be in submission and stuff like that. So like I didn't have the office for a while, so it took me, once I finally got that, it's like, yeah, I'll fight. I fought a couple of times unbelted.
Did you have to work up to figuring out your mental game for tourneys? And if so, how did you do that?
Well, I was gifted, just joking.
I'm like, oh, another one.
I'm a total killer. I was a sniper in the military. Yeah. No, actually, yeah, that was probably my biggest struggle, was that mental thing. When everybody talks about their story on that, it was so funny. I would go to Crown and and I do okay, and I wasn't. And when I started working hard is when it really became more relevant, or to up front in my face. I'm like, what the hell is wrong? I am just, choking or what? I don't get it. What's going on with me? And I remember my ex-wife was like, I don't know why at practice you don't have a problem, and we're having a practice at my house. This is the Mondays back in the day, and we'd have, a couple of Dukes counts 4 or 5 nights and practice every week in my backyard, right? And we're just doing this bear pit constantly. And, it's like, I have no problem there going 8 rounds. No problem. Don't even think about fight great. Go to crown, 3rd, 4th round, I'm out. I'm happy to be in the 5th round. And I realized it's just my perspective. And, I finaled a couple of times. I made Jonathan Von Troth a Duke by losing to him twice, which that's a whole nother story there, because the first time it's like I didn't expect. I was happy to win 1 fight. The second time we fought, my squire shows me the video. The video is exactly the same fight I had the year before that I lost to him. I fought exactly the same damn way. It was like a repeat. I was just wearing different armor. Yeah, it was crazy. I was gonna cry. I wanted to hit the TV actually, but but anyhow, I'm glad he's a Duke, and I wasn't at the time. But after that point, I started thinking, it was like, I need to change my mindset. And what had happened was, I realized I was too busy worrying about my 2 lives, because we had the 2 and you're out single fight double limb, and I was so worried about losing a life. And then the second time I watched Duke Phelan, at the time Sir Phelan, fighting in the final round against another guy, hoping he wins, because I lost my first fight. We had a three-way tie to go in the final round, and I'm like, please, Richie, win. Please, Richie, win. I want another goddamn chance at this, right? And I was like, that's when I realized I need to go take the goddamn crown.
Right.
And that was my flipping point there, to break that glass. And he won, and I was like, oh, thank you, God. And I was like, 1,000-mile stare going there, and then I just remember the video. It's like, you don't see me fighting here. Clack, 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 good. Next fight, clack, 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 good. I'm like, well, couldn't you get in the fights on video? But yeah, that was that time when I got over that mental game to a certain level, because I remember fighting, not the crown after. The crown after, I didn't expect much, but the second one after I was a count, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna do this. And man, it was epic failure for myself in a lot of aspects, because I realized at that point, yeah, you mentally can be there, and you hear those stories like, oh, well, I fought so and so, and then he turned on his A game, right? We all hear that story. And I was like, so I thought it was like, yeah, you flip a switch and you have this A game, and you like blow up on somebody.
Reserve.
Yeah, right. It's like, all right, I really got to get that A game button going. Let's like level up. And I realized it's like, no, the guy that won the crown for myself last time was the guy that worked a year going to practice and figuring out how to fight better and harder. And I was like, all right, I got to do that. And after that, I was like, that's what got me into a better mode. And I like to be organized and structured. That's why I'm a Pelican. So I basically figured out, hey, this is a process that works for me, and I keep using that process. And like, I have a whole strategy of, okay, I want to fight in crown, I want to do well. I never think I'm going to go win. I'm not one of those guys, right? It's like, I go there to try to win. But I'll get myself set up to where I'm geared, so I show up that day, and that's worked pretty well for me, except maybe one time, but I didn't put enough time in it.
So you're about like, your part of your confidence level depends on if you feel prepared well enough or not, right? Is that what you're saying? Because you have a plan. And
I think it's getting it's the mental game battle for me. If I get prepared prior, then I'm good. But my confidence is always there, because I always, it's like any, like when everything happens, your car breaks down, you're like, you know what? I'm not a mechanic, but I know how to work on cars. I'll figure it out, but the more prepared I am, and like mentally I get myself prepared, just the better my performance is by far, in my opinion.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go back to your knighting. Was your knighting a surprise?
Actually, yes and no. Because at that point, because I was in like, and a gaggle of guys, right, with, where everybody was just, on that path together, And, so we were lucky to feed off each other. When I look back at it, we were so fortunate when you have 6 people that are just beating each other up, and, and they're all in that path to get knighted. Right. And and I stopped thinking and worrying about the whole knighting thing, because I was sitting there thinking it would be really cool to be like the first unbelted Duke in our kingdom, because that's what I really wanted at that point. I was like, you know what? I want to be a guy. I'm not going to worry about the knight thing. I want to be the guy that walks on the battle, or, out in the practice field, and everybody's like, I don't want to fight that guy. He's just, going to tear me apart. Right. Which that's I think it was 23 mindset right there, 23-year-old mindset, it's just like, which would still be kind of cool. But, at that point, what happened though was his 12th night, and the crown was from Artemisia. It was Thorfinn and Sarah. And, and I'm like clueless, like, hey, we're at 12th night, it's a big event for us. And, we show up there, and my Squire brothers and all that, we're all messing around in the parking lot. And I went outside to go smoke a cigarette and hang out, and they're all like shuffling around something. And I'm like, I think something's up, but, as court went on, I went back in, they were having court, and next thing you know, I'm getting grabbed. Right. I'm like, oh, what the fuck is happening right there? I'm sorry. And I didn't even know. Yeah. I didn't even know. I was so I was shocked at that point. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, this is happening. Son of a gun, And then they put me on vigil. Right. Well, I was on vigil for like 5 hours.
Oh.
I got tired that day. So next thing you know, they throw me in this choir, white choir boy outfit, which I still have actually. And I can fit, for the record, for Merrick, if he's watching. You try to do that, Merrick. But yeah, I sat vigil, which was a very surreal moment too. There, I'm in a hay bale behind a church, and everybody's talking to me. It's kind of interesting, especially after giving vigil now. You're like, oh, okay.
So the people around you knew, because they had this white outfit ready for you. Okay.
Yeah, the household knew, because one of my friends was my model. They're all telling me, oh yeah, I was your guy. I wore your outfit. I'm like, oh, cool.
Well, that's cool that they could keep their mouth shut. Like, a lot of people just can't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that is like one of those cool things when you see somebody that's surprised, because sometimes some guys, they kind of figure out because their friends inadvertently give it away, But when you see that just jaw drop, and you're like, yeah, because we've all worked for it, right? And we know, the time and effort and the sacrifice do we do to get there, and then you're like, yes, like, I made it. What now? That's usually the problem afterwards.
So when you got knighted, because you had, you kind of had the goal that I think maybe is the right mindset, is, to be the best fighter possible, like before you got knighted, and to kick a lot of ass. Whether it was 23-year-old you, I'll show them, or whatever. Did your attitude change after you got knighted, or did it stay the same?
Oh, I wanted to get good. I just, because at that point, like when I got knighted, I don't think I was fighting. I was fighting okay. I think a lot of things that carried me was being left-handed, and fast, and I didn't feel like I was fighting good, or the expectation I would think, because I had some friends that I thought fought really well technically, right? And I was looking at that perspective of fighting, to where I didn't think I was controlling a fight at that point, but that was my feel. It was like, all right, I got to do better, and then I ended up getting a Squire. And that's what really kind of switched my gears, because I'm in my backyard trying to teach the Squire to hit my pel, and he's 16, right? So he's been around the United States since he was 14. And I was trying to describe range, we're doing this near far thing, just like Sesame Street, I'm like running up to the pel, near, far,
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I explained this to him for like, it felt like a half hour. It was probably shorter than that. And he's just giving me this blank look, going, well, that's not feedback for me, man. And I'm like, I beat that horse so dead. There's this blood all over. And later he's laughing at me because he's like, I got it. I don't know why you kept explaining it to me.
So, it was, I got it.
Yeah. And I realized at that point, I'm like, what kind of knight are you if you can't teach? You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm supposed to teach squires. I don't even know how to teach. So that was like, boom, that changed a lot for me there, because I had to learn how to teach, but in the process of learning how to teach, I learned more of the nuances and the smaller pieces of fighting and how better to put them together. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, and now I call, the fighting formula, really, basically, but yeah, so that I kept that goal. It's like I did want to be a Duke, because the guys I looked up to, which was like Trelon. I mean, the guy was, oh my God, Trelon's, king 6 times, Brian Tarragon, king this many times. You're like, wow, that's got to be crazy. You don't think about, oh, I got to sit 1,000 courts and give 1 million awards and spend all this time doing this stuff. You're like, yeah, you get to go win this tournament and be king. It's like, hey, everybody, we're gonna do what I say, whatever that is. But okay, Yeah.
But to skip some of your story, I mean, you have reigned 6 times, which is, I think, how many Brian reigned in Aytonville. He has more than that because he reigned in the and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like 8 or 9.
Yeah. So do you have plans to do more?
Well, if Trelon had 6 and I went 1 more, I would have 1 more than him. So maybe really, it really boils down to this. The thing that's motivated me the most anymore is we have counts out there that want to be a Duke. And if I can prevent that and make their life terrible, why shouldn't I? That should be my goal.
Okay, so I think like there's a kernel of truth in that, right? Because part of what people look at as their job as a knight, and I'm sure like maybe as a royal peer, I'm not a royal peer, so I don't know, is to test the crown, right? To make sure that the crown is tested and that you're in the tourney and making sure that whatever. So there is a sliver of truth in there, right? Like.
Well, I'll be honest with you. No, there's some people that do that, and I had a friend that fought in Crown, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to make sure so and so doesn't win," or something like that. And what bothered me, was who am I to go on a Crown to take somebody out or drop out whenever I want, kind of thing. And I thought it was just dishonest to the tournament itself, and then it's also unfair to fight, and then because if you don't want to win, then you have to drop out. So basically what I did is my first 2 rounds I took out a squire or something like that, and then I gave a guy 2 fights so I could get myself out for me. To me, I just think it's just a little disingenuous, but that's opinion. I mean, other people view it differently, and I don't want to knock their thought process. So usually when I fight, I honestly do fight to win. I mean, there's a couple times recently that I fought, I'm like, I just couldn't get there. It's like, all right, well, that's what happens when you don't do the process. Will.
Corrected me. I guess Brian reigned 8 times in Aytonville, so I was wrong. That's 8. So
8. Oh man, yeah. Somebody check that, huh?
Yeah. Well,
fact checkers.
Yeah. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But what you're talking about, I mean, who wants to play to be the person that disallows things, right? Like that, like it's kind of like a mentality in council too, right? Is like you don't want to be the person that is just there to say no, right? Like that's not the way you want to play, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to be honest with it, and have I failed at some of the stuff? Yeah. I mean, there's a few times that I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have participated with this or that or done this kind of thing, and it's like, yeah, that's not my principles, and it's like, you got to keep yourself in check. And I think it's, the more honest we all are, it's like, hey, if you don't like something, like, it's like Crown, if you don't want somebody to win Crown, you hold them out.
Right.
And if you have a legitimate reason, it should be the only reason. I mean, I've advised Crowns out as Seneschal. It's like, and being Crown's like, if don't hold. I try not to do my personal views on those things because I may not like somebody or whatever. I try to remind myself, because you don't like them doesn't mean they're this or that. They're just not my cup of tea. And it's unfair for me to think I'm the guy that's gonna ruin that for them. I mean, I'd hate that somebody to do that to me.
Right. And I mean, being Crown too, I mean, isn't there sort of a balance between what you think will be good, and knowing that maybe what you think isn't necessarily the best thing, like, right? So even though maybe they're not your cup of tea, that doesn't mean they'd actually be bad for the kingdom, right?
Yeah, exactly. Uh, there's more than one way to skin the cat, and like like when I'm on the throne, I'm not Mr. Giggly, I guess. I'm usually pretty much the straight guy in the act, or I'm trying to be serious, right? Why I got cut ups behind me all the time. But I've seen other people that do that well. I just don't do that well, and who am I to judge that? That's not, people have a blast with it,
Right.
and
Right.
and I think that's what keeps it interesting for everybody else. It's like, otherwise it'd be pretty boring if everybody was like me.
Exactly. Even if you're awesome, right? Like, you just,
Yeah.
variety is the spice of life. Okay, so let's go back to your first crown win. What felt different for you about that tournament from the ones that you finaled in and didn't close?
What felt different? That first crown, the thing that felt different was when I made that decision of, why am I trying to worry about a life out of the two lives I have? I should go win. And I know it sounds silly, but and I've told other people this, the thing that really went through my mind is, at the point just getting ready to just sit there praying for failing to win, was, you watch the Olympics and there's a guy in this race, and you see the guy running along and he's all, yeah, all right, I'm taking it. And he's got the odds, right? Next thing you know, this guy from some third world country runs by and just does the leap right into the tape. And he's like, I just lost, it's like, yeah, because that guy wanted to win, and that was the thing. It's like, it just hit me there. And it's like, all right, this is the attitude you have to have. I have had the wrong attitude all this time. It's like, go take the crown. I don't have the crown. Nobody has that crown.
Right. Instead of worrying about your two deaths, you have to let yourself fight, right? You have to give yourself permission to go for it.
Yeah, just take it. Because if you're not trying to take the throne, or the crown, then you're not invested in it. It's like, you're a mom, right? And hunting
Yes.
for your child. It's like, I'm going to get food. It's a much different thing than like, maybe I'll go get food.
Right. And when you worry too much about losing, you don't give yourself permission to actually fight your fight and to lay it out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about your first reign. I know it was your ex-wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
So were you surprised by anything when you reigned? Like, was it different than you thought it would be?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't have the, being on the financial committee and discussing the event stuff. I really wasn't aware about, like on the business side of things as much, and then figuring out the awards process too, because, that was when we were first really online, and like we had a recommendation system and stuff. So that was kind of new, and, still got letters. But really, doing the court was probably the one of the biggest thing, because, I'm not shy, but I'm not was never really a public speaker either. So you're standing up and there's 100 people and you're supposed to inspire them, and you like watch enough of Henry V, like, yeah, I want to be that guy. And you're over there like, okay, well, we're going to give Bobby his airway today. He's a really great guy. We heard great things. 3 huzzahs, and you walk in and you're like, I just blew it.
So did you find your footing your first reign? Like, did you figure out how to have that presence in court, or did it take a couple reigns?
That first reign, it was like, I kept having somebody tell me, talk louder or speak from the diaphragm and stuff. I'm like, okay. And then I had to let go about worrying about being a fool and embarrassing myself. I needed to let go and just go, all right, you know what? You got to own the room. I know you're nervous. You don't know what the hell to say, and like me remembering a script, forget it. Every time, somebody gives me a script, or we're like, hey, we're going to, change from your reign to mine. Here's your script. Here's the words. And like, I'll just do whatever the gist of what it says, because I'll remember at that part, it's like, so I just just learn to let go and just and not worry about it. And I've said some stuff. I'm like, whatever I said did not make sense, but man, the tone of my voice and my body was great. But if you recorded it, it'd just be gibberish. You know, it's like, what is he talking about? I don't know. But the Germans didn't bomb Pearl Harbor, right?
It sounded good. You were enthusiastic.
yeah. You know, I sold it, right? Yeah.
Well, what was your favorite part about your first reign?
You know, it was fun because, like, you know, we had a household and quite a few people in the household, and they were excited. So that was a kind of a cool energy. And, you know, we decided to do a theme. So we were Vikings the whole reign kind of thing, and did that. So that was kind of cool to be, you know, you're involved in this play, and, you know, we're doing costumes and we're going here and doing that and that kind of stuff. So that energy was really a lot of fun on that, you know, and also too, just being part of the process. Cause you know, when we're fighters, and when you sit there and you think of like, what are the ways you can give back? Right. And I'm not the most artistic, crafty person, but I can, set up tents all day. Right. But, when you're as a fighter, the one area you can give back, is like, being crowned, giving awards, recognizing those people that do other things. And, and I know it always sounds campy when everybody says it, but it is one of the coolest things there is you're able to give awards. And there's some awards that are just, really cool. Like, got to give a Lion of Aidenvelt, and in our kingdom, only the king gives that award. That's the one award that is not, or there's two awards. The queen has one for the white scarves, and then the king has the Lion of Aidenvelt. So it's like, it's your thing, it's your secret and everything else. And, spend 6 months figuring out, who am I going to give this line to? Am I going to give a line? So, I mean, that was probably really like one of the cool personal highlight points, but yeah, it was fun. It was great going to Penzig too. That was a huge one. As crown. Look like you froze there. Boop. Yeah, I can hear you. There you are. You're unfroze. Yeah.
Okay, good. I missed that part, but that's okay. But yeah, the lion is well, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay. The lion, we have a similar award. It's both, the crown gets to decide. I don't think it's just the king or the queen. And it's once a reign, and it's the same thing. I mean, it's, you get to decide who your rock star is, basically, right?
Yeah. And it's just so cool, and it's like, it's one of my favorites to watch people get, and some people get it that, you're like, wow, that person deserves it, and you're like, God, I wish I was crowned because I would have loved to do that. That was a good idea. You just catch it, and then, and it's not always that bright and shiny person that everybody's in love and popular. It's, it's that person you're like, son of a gun, that person really works their ass off for everybody and is so giving to themselves. And they're like, what the SCA should be for everybody, what we should do and emulate. And you're like, yeah, this is cool. That's why so many kingdoms have that,
Right. Before you won your first crown, had you already switched to your center mount?
Oh yeah. Okay. I was fighting center grip for a couple of years before that.
Okay.
And I did good in a principality tournament with it. I'm like, all right, sold. Yeah.
Well, you do have like quite a dynamic fighting style with that. I mean, you move all over the place and you get underneath it. I mean, it's called I think it's like your signature thing is the sombrero, right? I'm using the wrong hand, your right hand shield. But and I think I fought you at an Estrella once at an Outlands tourney. And you get under that thing and you're like, well, his whole body's open except that you're crouched down. Yeah. So it should be something open, but there's nothing open. So I don't know. Did that just come naturally to you? The whole sombrero?
I could say smart ass remarks, but I'll be good. Actually, well, remember like my foster knight was 5 foot tall, and he talked about hiding behind his shield, right, and using his height to his advantage. So when he would approach, going from that B range to A, he would actually do a little dip, or kind of like a lunge, to get lower. So he'd be up and under out of their sight. So they'd have to look over, and he'd just offside him in the face over his head, right? Well, so I would try to do that with the round shield a little bit. And then I was watching Torkel at a strap, and he was sitting there fighting, but his feet were really wide, right? And he had like one of the like West style bunny heaters, or like a small heater, right? And he's out there fighting, and I always like Torkel because of just, he's dynamic. He moves all over the place, so, you know, um, and he crouched down and like with a wider leg stance and just brought that shield. I'm like, damn, that's a really good idea. I should try that out. And then that's when I started like getting away with murder for a year until everybody figured it out,
Like, what the hell was he doing?
Oh yeah, I want to tell you, I got really good at flat snaps to legs for a while, and I missed those days. I learned a valuable lesson: don't wear out the good stuff. Dole it out very slowly and very unoften.
It's interesting because a lot of smaller fighters feel like they have to be bigger, but you actually can take advantage of the fact that if you get even lower, that you have even less target to hit, which I think you master. So
for the most part, sometimes I'm good at it. There we go. We wouldn't say mastered.
Okay.
One day.
All right. So you had 5 Marines after your first one. Do you feel like that reining has evolved in Atenvelt over the last, I guess it's been 12 years. You've reigned over a span of 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And if so, how?
So you mean like just in general, the crown evolving throughout those years? Well, really when you look at it, because to me, like I was fortunate to where the SCA kind of had that swell at the the late 90s, early 2000s, right? And things have changed over the period of time because there's more things to do, and there's the internet, which actually is a huge factor. And I think, the crowns have evolved. We also had Artemisia separated out, because I remember being in Australia the first year, the Outlands was its own kingdom, so from my perspective timeline, it's like, okay, they've always been a kingdom to me, not a principality in Adenville, right? So after Artemisia separated out, here we were just Arizona, and it was very interesting at that point. And how many events and all that stuff. But I think so, but with the aspect of the geographical change and the electronic communication, and the kingdom obviously adopted electronic communication. I mean, it's amazing how many people like on the, Adenvelt, you're probably like, my God, are they all online all day?
I'm just wondering if you're all friends. You all seem very tight. But
well, yeah, I think in the fighting community, everybody that stays around eventually has to get along at some point, right? And because we are smaller, we see each other a little more often because, we would have, 40 events and, not like everybody went, but, you'd look at, there's so many different events that we're all at. So what do you end up doing? Hanging out with your friends, pay your site fee to hang out and drink beer and bullshit. So you end up building up these friendships, and then, you got people that do the shenanigans. So you end up, getting involved in that and laughing at that stuff. So, so I guess there's a lot of us that are pretty close,
Has your view of knighthood or peerage changed over the years? And if so, how?
Yes. And, and I think it's a natural thing for everybody to grow and change their opinion. It's like I remember being in Knight Circle going, well, the guy's got to fight really good, and that's, the early times when I got knighted, to now I'm at a place where I'm like, well, if somebody's going to get knighted, they got to have the tools to teach and be better, because you might not, this is the beginning of your path. And if you do not have those tools, then you're really not living up to your part of the agreement, because your job is to serve the crown and teach other people. So if you can't do that, then you're really not a knight, because there's always going to be people that are good fighters, and then there's going to be okay fighters. It's just the way it is, and it's probably a good thing, because it keeps the pool level-headed and not one-sided too. But yeah, it has changed. I've gone through so many iterations of what I think a member of the chivalry is. you know, but most of it was really just around trying to define what that starting point of getting the accolade and what will move them forward and provide to this, you know, and yeah, there we go.
How many squires have you had, and what do you look for in a squire?
How many have I had?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't keep that track.
Okay, so it's a lot.
Actually, I've had quite a few squires, but I've had, I like my very first squire showed up to 2 practices, and I gave him the squire's belt I wore for 3 years, right? This is like my lineage thing. I only had 1 belt. I never bought another belt, right? I give it to him, he disappears.
Oh.
So I lose this thing, and I mean, it was like, all right, it's a simple thanks, but it's like, god damn, but I've had quite a few squires, but a lot of them just dropped from playing, so I'm like, I basically, I probably have, I think I have 5 active squires, which is probably a high point. Usually I always have 1 to 2 active squires, and then I'll have 4 that show up to Australia or around that time frame to go to the war, because that's their goal. They just want to just go do that. But really, in looking for a squire, I honestly, I just look for people that just want to do the club, honestly, anymore. It used to be more about the fighting, like, hey, why do you want to be a squire? You want to get knighted. And I learned a valuable lesson that that's not everybody's dream. I have a squire, he could have got knighted, and if he put the time into fighting. He had all the parts to it. He wasn't a jerk, and he had, he actually was a physical ability. He just, he didn't want to dedicate time. He had other hobbies, and he told me, yeah, I just want to be a squire. I'm like, who am I to ruin his dream?
Right.
So like, you want to be a squire? You show up and you do your squire thing. Why not? Why do I care? That's what we're supposed to be doing. And but like looking, I just look for people that just aren't crazy, really, when it gets down to it.
You have a very low bar.
Well, because it's like you're gonna hang out with this person, and like I have a rule, like one of my best buddies, I consider him my brother, right? Sir Reese. We were 19, we hung out a lot, and and then he went to the military, came back, and he decided to do the SCA, and I really wanted to squire him, right? Because it's like he's like my brother, right? And I was like, oh, this is awesome, and but I was like, you can't do that, because you might not be the right fit, and then you're going to pressure him into squiring to you, which is stupid, and then he'll be unhappy, and I made him shop. I'm like, you need to go talk to a bunch of knights. And then I tell that to everybody. It's like, go find somebody you can camp with and hang out with, because that friendship is the critical part, and any knight that's worth their salt will be like, you're left-handed. Why don't you go work with Craven for a little while and work on some stuff about position and stuff, so you can learn some stuff from him. And then my job is to teach you to be a knight, and so that's where my mind's up going with it. It's like, that's what I want out of somebody, is just, they're going to hang out, they're not crazy, and I can send them to the guy that's going to teach them. You want to be a glaive fighter? I'm not a glaive fighter. You picked the wrong guy if you wanted me to teach you glaive, but I'll teach you to be a knight. There's plenty of good glaive fighters. That my job is to network for you.
Right. I think that's important too, that people understand that well, in my opinion, a good knight will farm you out to their brethren, to teach you the things that they aren't as good at, and that somebody else would be better at. And that's a sign of maturity, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're not the end all be all for everything.
Well, and like, your squire is doing well is not a measure of your success, even though people kind of make it that way. But really, it's just like, like I have a squire that's been waiting to get knighted since Australia. He's a COVID vigilant. But it's like, yeah, I've guided him on his path to advise him, but really, he's the one that showed up to practice and put the time in and did the work and figured it out. And that's the way it is, and it's his work that's getting him knighted.
Right.
I just get to say, oh yeah, I got 6 guys knighted or whatever. You know what I mean? It's really there's no real value to that in the long run. Nobody will care. They don't put that on your tombstone.
They don't?
No. Yeah.
I kind of skipped your whole consort thing, but I know that your consort is important to you. What role does she serve on your on tourney day?
On tourney day?
Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah. My wife is really good. Because, I'm like a lot of the people. It's like, hey, I don't mind a little idle chat. I don't want to get in a big conversation. I want to stay focused in the day. So, she just checks on me, kind of keeps things light up in the front, and I stay out in the back and try to stay focused in things. Shows up to the Eric so I know where she's at, so I can salute her correctly and stuff like that. And then also too, it's like, we have the agreement, if she thinks that I'm doing really bad or something's bad, like I'm missing something or bad behavior, she's gonna tell me is what I want her to. So it's like, hey, you're screwing up, like, so I can go fix my problem if something weird happened, um and it's more her worried about me embarrassing myself than that the whole honor and thing of it, honestly. But it's that teamwork of taking care of each other there. But yeah, that's pretty much really it. She kind of lets me be. I'm kind of like hands off. It's like, yeah, nobody bug me, just tell me when I'm supposed to fight, what area I'm in, and I'll get my own food, and if they bring me drinks, great, just don't bug me.
And I'm gonna sort of switch the topic a little bit, but we had talked before we went live about your Pelican and what you got it for. If you could sort of explain that and the importance that you put on service to your kingdom, that would be awesome.
Yeah, well, basically what I did is back in the day, we used to save money by putting money in a Christmas fund. And so I did that, but I did it to the Pelican Fund, mailed it off to the Crown, said, do whatever you want. No.
I was like, what? I'm like, with you. And I'm like, oh, wait. That doesn't make sense.
We actually made a drinking game for this interview. So every time I did some absurd thing that you were trying to figure out, what the hell is he talking about? You have to take a drink.
There you go. Somebody needs to take a drink.
But anyhow, I think service is important. I mean, our contributions, some people do it for the arts. Some people do it to service. I'm more service oriented, and and like, my night did a lot of service, and that kind of left an impression on me to do that. And and there's only, the kingdom is always in need. And like when I was crowned the first time, I remember the seneschal is like, yeah, the last crown, or the second time I ran, I think. They're like, yeah, the Crown said that, the last king one said he, wants to help out and so forth, because always have job openings, right? And people are afraid to take on jobs, and they don't realize those jobs are time, but they're not as hard and difficult as they think, and not as political. I think a lot of people, put that as part of it, and they also make it, like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear you're a seneschal. It's like, I wrote a letter applying for the job.
I asked
it wasn't like somebody yanked me out of my house and said, you're the seneschal, god damn it, and here's your warrant. But I think it is important. We all contribute in our own ways. Heralds and bards do their thing, people that do offices do their thing, and I luckily for me, it's like, I was a baronial marshal, I autocrated an event, consultant in the work, Skimmy and Crown, you do get involved. Estrella is a machine, back in the day it was a big machine, and, you're doing something for Estrella. If you haven't, it would be a surprise, and just doing, being seneschal a couple of times really helped, and which is, a great thing. I mean, you have to do the work, and so service is important, to answer your question.
Okay. Do you have like a goal now in the STA that you are striving toward?
Yeah, I guess, like I don't look at the peerages and stuff as goals, right? I've been involved in many of the decisions, and peerages can be so arbitrary, because it's the Crown's thoughts, right? But really, like I've been delving into doing rapier a lot. Like I broke my hand. I did it for like 12 weeks, where I tried to heal my hand so I could go back to fighting hard soup. And then I broke my hand again This is lack of armor. Uh, and I
You
went,
need two demis.
yeah. I have a demi now. Used to be
Okay.
just a golf glove.
All right.
Worked for a long time. I don't know what happened, but that was a good 3 years of my life. But so I started doing rapier, and the first time, it's like you don't get good at just something. It's like, and people do that too. Like card suitors, like they come over and like, oh, you'll be good. It's like, yeah, you might, but you still have to. It's a different game. It's like switching from sword and board to going, I'm gonna go fight Florentine now. It's like, yeah, that's totally two different things. And you have to put the time in to get good at it. You just have some shit that you bring with you. So I would say, getting better at rapier, it's been kind of a fun challenge, and it's been mentally challenging to learn something totally. There's similarities, but learning the different nuances to it has been interesting, and it appeals to my the intelligent side of fighting, trying to figure it out and play with it.
Because there's a lot that translates, but there's a lot that's different.
Yeah. And so, I want to see if I can get better at that.
So somebody wants to know what the story is behind the skeletal hand on your shield.
Oh, that's an easy story, and it's short, so we're even safe. See, I'm even got a skeletal hand here, right?
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So the skeletal hand, heroically was a cusp hand pass like this, right? And I had it on my shield. Where we got that was I went to Penzig in '91. So we had some friends from the East. They're like, you should go to Penzig. So me and my ex-wife, we were like, okay, cool. So we all drove out there with them because they were from the East. So that was my first Penzig ever, right? And we camped with this group, Barony. I don't know if they were Barony at the time, but it was Setmer Swamp, and they're out of the East. And we camped there, and they had a bunch of art guys, right? So they were art nerds, and they were putting these skeletal hands on everything. So they were cutting them out of duct tape with X-Acto knives and drawing them on. They were all over. They were just peppered. I'm like, what the hell is that? It's from Calvin and Hobbes. It's they're the Sinister Icy Black Hand of Death fan club that they were doing, right? So I was like, that is totally cool, right? So we came home, and like a year later, I was like, I should do that. So we stole that. So that's where the skeletal hand came from, was Calvin and Hobbes.
Cool. That's cool. That's one of my favorite, was one of my favorite cartoons. That's cool. And then before we look at your sword, we'll go back to one more question. Somebody asked, when it comes to the Lions of Atenville, did you typically award it to people who were already peers and went above the PLQs, or is it something you gave more in the non-peers who went above and beyond, or neither?
Well, no, it happened to be peers because I think it's the amount of time they put in, so you think about those people that have been around doing something consistently, but really it would never came, like the decision of are they a peer or not, and it was never really in my mind. It was a matter of who they are and what makes them up. So I really don't care. I never really thought about that, except for Merrick. I thought Merrick was,
Is Merrick a lion?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. He was pity. He was pity. He was crying, He
was a pity lion?
Yeah, he was a pity lion. Because I know he's watching these. So,
he is.
Yeah, of course. But really, it is, to me, it's like, it sounds hokey, but it's like, it has to feel good in here, in my heart, to where like that person really, it's like they need this recognition. I think they're a lion. They're somebody that people should aspire to be like.
I would think that if somebody was getting a lion and they weren't a peer, there would be something wrong there. There would be a disconnect, because if somebody's putting in that kind of effort and they're a pillar of the kingdom, they would be a peer.
More than likely you would think, it would be a really odd case of why, Yeah.
All right. Well, did we skip anything that you are just bursting to talk about?
No.
Okay.
There's always stuff to talk about, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could talk about fighting all day, but let's look at your sword.
All righty. See, here, I'll scoot back. It's so big.
Oh my God, it is really long.
No, it's that small. That's how short I am. This is 36 inches.
That's 36?
Yeah. Oh, do I need to get a ruler out?
How tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
Okay. Well, I'm still shorter than you, but that you make 30, well, I'm not going to say that because it's going to sound bad. But
Yeah,
just look
exactly.
at your
That's a good
chart.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I just do a 36, I mean, I don't do anything really special. I mean, I actually took what I do now from Uther a long time ago, because I was trying to hit a little harder, and we were doing the 1 1/4 inch sticks, and they're just a little too whippy. I was like, hey, how do you make your swords? And he told me, the whole story, and he pretty much was about the same. Didn't elaborate on the handle as much, but I just started getting an 1.5 inch, playing it down, cut it 36, and then shave the handle. It's like they make hammers that are ergonomic because they paid engineers to research that. So I make the handle to where it's in my hand, and then but to preemptive answer your question, I don't use a trigger.
Okay.
But I use a lanyard because it's according to the rules. But I actually found that my hand slides in my hilt. So like when I throw like a thumb lead wrap, my hand ends up at the bottom of the hilt. So I let it slide down. So, and then when I get in tight and I'm doing like a short stick, I'll actually grip up a little tighter up to the top. So my hand slides back and forth. So trigger would be terrible. Because I thought about it, I was like, hey, you should try that. And I'm like, I'd really hate my finger to get broken.
Yeah. I think, my trigger is long enough that I can slide with the trigger.
Yeah.
But you don't have a problem like with your loose hand with not having a trigger, like losing your grip or anything?
No, because I don't do the sports tape or anything like that. I use a golf glove. I've always used golf gloves.
Oh.
And so like I tried the friction tape or the racquetball tape, and they're like, yeah, not with the golf glove. It was just too sticky. And then also too, it's that there's something about the touch and feel that I can, I get out of it. So that sensory right there. So I've tried to do like the street hockey gloves, like, hey, I really need to protect the back of my hand with more than a golf glove, right? And they're like, nope, too thick a glove. Like the Princess and the Pea.
Yeah. I have that same problem. I cannot wear a glove. I like to feel it on my skin.
Yeah.
And so you just have to find a demi that doesn't move too much. Otherwise, you get these big lumps on the back of your hand.
Yeah. I used to have basket hilts chew holes in my fingers or my
Yes.
knuckles from that. Like, oh, okay, good. Basket hilt injury.
Do you have a thrusting tip?
I am lately. This last year, or actually last 2 years, I've been playing with it just to see if I can work it into my shots. Because my theory has always been a thrusting tip only work. The shot's only good if it works within a shot that you throw, and I really don't throw a lot of shots like that. So it's been a novelty to play with, but I don't know. Still jury out.
Yeah.
But when I started out, we didn't do thrusting tips because you had to have them the 2-inch diameter, right? Like the spears. So basically, you just patted your weapon. So some guy doesn't know you hit him with a flat snap. It's like, all right, that ain't gonna happen. Screw it. You need the thrusting tip.
It's like you had this really long mace with this tiny head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so let's Merrick says I need to ask you about the shovel before we end the interview. So before we get to the last questions, tell me about the shovel.
The shovel. Have you heard anything about the shovel before?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't? Well, okay. The shovel was an idea that I came up with because I was reading something about the plague and the and pilgrim badges, right? And I was just doing some offhand research on like liveries and stuff, and I was reading on this plague about where they had these plague badges, right? I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. So, and we were talking, and there was a little politics going on, and and there was a lot of people were upset because they had friends in that, either side or whatever, right? And we were going to be crowned, or we were crowned at getting close to that point. We were crowned prince, princess, and I was like, this is a tough time for a lot of people, and there's a lot of emotion, right or wrong, or whoever what, and with online Facebook and stuff, it feeds so much negativity, and it just spirals. We all see it, right? So I don't have to explain more. So I was like, maybe we should take this little livery badge and we talk about the plague. Well, the plague is gossiping and talking about other people and spreading it, right? We're all guilty of gossip. We can't help it. So we came up with the shovel as the livery thing for it. And we, had one of the guys up north is Laurel. He casted, I think 500 shovels for us that were like, an inch long. And our herald wrote up a whole story from the Department of Disease and Control or something for the Kingdom of Adenvelt and all that. And we had somebody come in with the plague mask and everything else, and when we were going in, and he read this whole thing, and it was about don't spread gossip, and just basically those pieces there, and judging people and so forth, because that's the plague, is spreading that. Because it's misinformation. It's like you don't know what's going on, and now you're making other people's lives more miserable, and our hobby's getting ruined by the lack of facts. So that was the whole idea there. So.
The shovels were like pilgrim badges, or?
Yeah. So we handed them out. We're just giving little shovels to people, so they, as a reminder, it's like, hey, you know what? Quit gossiping about the person. Quit talking about them behind their back. I mean, I'm probably guilty of that, every once in a while, but we all are. But it's a good reminder. There's plenty of times I'm like, you should just shut up, because you really don't know the truth of what the story is. So just.
So is it like shoveling shit? Is that like?
Well, that's where this is the part I didn't think about. Was where people would take the shovel thing, like, yeah, it's for burying the dead people that you buried. Like, shut up, and then shoveling the shit and everything else. I'm like, who knew? But that works out okay for me. I don't care, because it's an easy symbol, but it's it's something just to have a tangible reminder, for people.
I like that. I think I don't understand why people expend so much energy being negative. I don't get it. I think kindness is just so easy, and it's just you treat people the way you want to be treated, and when you do that, everything's cool, right? Like, I don't understand that expensive energy. And I love that as Crown, you did something about trying to refocus that.
Yeah, because it's not easy on the people that are involved or close to the
No.
people that are involved, and it's like, yeah, this is really hurting their hobby,
right.
And
the hobby is supposed to be the fun part of our life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're just human, and that's our weaknesses.
I love that. I love that you did something about that, because especially now when we don't have events, social media has become a huge way for everybody to interact. It's like really the only way.
Yeah.
And if we could just take how we interact in person and take
that's the problem. They don't, they act different than they do in person. It's like,
right.
I mean, there's plenty of times I've typed stuff and then deleted out going, don't, right. People don't understand what you're going to say, and why bother?
What?
This is not human interaction. This is spewing shit on screen.
And you're never going to change someone's mind on social media with a comment. Anyway, that's my perspective. All right, so let's do the final 10.
Okay.
If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
In the world will be actually, since I've watched these, I knew the question. Actually, who I have not gotten a chance to fight. We both did our ducal reigns at the same time, and it was Felix of the Middle.
Oh.
He's crowned right now. We've never got to fight with each other, and and it was kind of a cool moment. He was like, "Hey, we're both getting our ducals," and it was kind of cool to be like, this inner kingdom thing with each other about it. But he's like, I've never got a chance to fight him, so I'm assuming next Penzic I'm going to. It's like I'm gonna harass him. He camps like real close to our block.
I think you need to hunt him down and make it a date. That's got to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'm interviewing him in a couple of weeks. I might bring it up and make sure.
You should. Just like, you can say I thought he was kind of a chump and I didn't want to fight him last time, and this time I'm like, he's been king enough, maybe.
I can't tell him that he has to quit ducking you, but
you could do that too.
Oh.
It's like Craven was crying about it on our interview.
All right. Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
Well, aside from the usual answer that everybody gives, that's a tough, because I really did think about it, like, hey, who do I really want to see? There's so many people. I mean, it's kind of funny, but I enjoy so much watching the people I watch do the work, because I'll go to Penzic, I'll go to Great Western, and they're out there doing the pickups. And there's so many people when they do the work, it's like, God, I can't wait for them to be crowned. It's because it's just fun. You're like, hey, I get to be your knight. So I really don't have anybody special. There's people I don't want to see win, but like Merrick.
We're not going to go like Merrick.
If you have a count, I don't want you to win.
He needs to stay afloat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you could talk fighting with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
That one I've not gotten a full answer with. Actually, my honest answer is I've talked to so many people about fighting, and I'm like Bella, where like when I get in a social setting, like you see me at a party or something and we're all hanging out, I don't even bring up fighting at all, because I'm like, I don't want, it's like we're talking shop, and everybody's like, oh, they're talking fighting, but anybody that wants to, because it's such a fun topic, like like yourself, it's like anybody is. Okay. Yeah.
All right, what is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Henry V, the Kenneth Branagh version.
Oh, yes, he's awesome. Okay, if you could add a rule or subtract a rule from the rules of the list, what would it be?
I guess I'm on the party of add a rule of don't be a dick.
What is your favorite tournament format?
Out of all the formats, I mean, there's so many good ones. I watched Adamar's, and he bringing up the Knight Marshall one. That's a fun tournament. Format wise, I guess on a serious tournament, I like how we do our crowns. For a fun tournament, a William Marshall or a snowball where you go into doing a final melee with everybody is fun. But
Those are fun.
I like how we do our crowns is like for the series tournament, because you get the 2 out of 3, and it's a long day, and man, like I won quite a few crowns where you only had 2 lives, and you had those chances. So making a mistake was just major critical, and that's something that sits in the back of your head. It's like, yeah, you have to practice this shot and make sure you don't miss it, right? And we went to the 2 out of 3. It was like, oh, a little less pressure. This is kind of cool. But the other part that I noticed with it was we had less fighter tension when things weren't going well in a fight, because they naturally get a do-over, so it seemed like crowns got a little cleaner, to where if there was an iffy situation, it was worked out a lot faster. And I think we've grown a little more on the community to communicate that stuff better too. But I think the 2 out of 3 adds to that.
When did that switch happen?
That switch happened, God, let's see what, boom. It's Southern, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it was about 4 years ago at this point. Is when that switched channel. Because I remember we talked about it during my reign, Morgan reigned, and then that's when they instituted. He took the jump, and we talked about it in the Shiv Circle.
Nice.
Yeah. What's
your favorite event?
There's a lot of events, but I was paid money by no. My favorite event, honestly, is there's something about Penzik for me that I enjoy, and I call it my vacation war, because that whole week, like I have a system for that event, and because they only do like open fields day this day, and that's all you fight. So you're gonna fight up to 5 if your team loses, and so that's over before lunch, usually, or like around lunch, and you go do pickups for an hour and a half, and then you go back and you have a late lunch, take a nap, go, wake up, go get dinner, go take a shower, and then wait for a couple hours, like around Merchants Row or whatever, and then go party and do it all over again, because you have so much time to do everything, to where like Estrella, it's like, get up in the morning, get my armor on, go fight, get done, come back, eat, shower, eat dinner, and go hang out. It's like, yeah, so that's why Penzik's my favorite thing. I've gone so many every year almost.
I'm sure Estrella is a lot of work for you guys too, because you're all putting it on, so it's not relaxing.
Yeah, and this is not enough days, so like I don't go to Merchants Row. I pick a day and go to Merchants Row, to where it's like, yeah, we set up camp, and I got a decent sized little household, so set up and tear down is work, and got other stuff going.
We need a war on the West Coast that's more than 3 days long.
Yeah. It's like it would be nice.
It would be, because getting to Pensick is quite the trek. Anyway.
Yeah. I've driven like 8 times now.
Wow. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
Man, you do not realize the relationship I have with my helmet.
Oh, right. Are you one of those ones that you've had your helmet for like a decade and nobody's gonna pry it out of your hands?
My helmet's older than my Squire getting knighted soon. I love Dave's helmets, and Ugo's helmets. I mean, there's so many nice helmets, but I never really think about a helmet that I want to have. I always worry about mine getting stolen or broken. If my helmet got stolen, that's like right after my child getting stolen.
See, I just haven't fallen in love with a helmet that much. But there are people that like you that you just can't. Even you could give them the most beautiful helmet in the world, and they'll try and be like, I like it.
Yeah. It fits me. It's perfect.
Yeah. All right.
And they don't make them anymore like that.
It's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
Well, it definitely wasn't me. I'm like one of those other dudes. I'm in bed by 10. And I never get in trouble. I watch other people, but I never get in trouble. But I guess there would be a couple of situations. More likely, my wife would kill me, but it was probably because she was up late she does this grilled cheese party on Wednesdays.
Oh, fun.
And they get lit and sing Disney songs in our kitchen until like 2, 3 in the morning, and then the neighbors get upset. So that would probably be it.
You have kids, right? Disney songs?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, then everybody loves Disney songs, so they're in there singing. They're actually pretty good. Merrick joins at that. He's good at singing.
He's got a nice voice.
Yeah. So they're all they have this kumbaya moment, and I'm in there cuddling with the kid, and I was like, let's just go to sleep. The drunk people will leave later.
They'll stop singing "Let It Go" sometime.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah! Please don't sing that one. That's the only one.
Right. Who's your favorite fight ever?
Favorite fight ever? God, I've been mulling that over for a while.
It's a hard one.
It really is. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, I've been so epic in so many fights.
Yeah.
No, favorite fighter. I don't have to say one of the standouts. It wasn't like this super intense fight, but it was enjoyable, and it was with Bella. We were at Great Western, and I've been in a funk for a couple of years, and this last year's been good, but I was in a funk, and me and him fought, and we weren't like trying to kick the shit out of each other, but we were fighting. It was very technical, and like we didn't even like beat the hell out of each other. It was just like tag. I was like, yeah, because you knew it was good, right? We had this interaction, and it was fun, and it was at the right time for me in the SCA where I just had fun, and I left the field like in a great mood, and Hansa was a close second that day, but me and Bill had a really good fight. It was just, I don't know, there was something about that fight. It was great,
Awesome. That's awesome. Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
God,
I sprung that one in there.
Yeah, I know. I've heard you say that. I was like, well, other than me, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's like if I could have a mirror and just watch it all day, I don't know what I would do. There's so many good fighters. I honestly, it sounds silly, but it's like, I really like watching, Rongvalder for the fact that he's left-handed, and he fights at that outside range so much more. He does something I don't do, and he managed it so well. So, and and you catch the nuances. So it's like watching, oh, I know what he's doing. You watch it. So I guess really he's one person that I do enjoy watching to fight, to see what he does. So maybe I can steal something one day.
It's technically very, very pretty.
Yeah. And you see all that pressure and stuff, and you're like, wow, it's like, that's awesome.
And so mentally intense. Like, he doesn't throw a lot, but like the mental energy he puts into his fights is amazing.
Oh yeah, that's what makes the fights good.
Yeah. Okay. And then the bonus question is, who is the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
Well, is this bathing or fighting? If it's bathing, I can't say Valora.
Oh.
Or maybe that's Nikita standing next to her. I can't tell. But cleanest fighter, God, you know, we're lucky. We do have quite a few. You know, I'd honestly, I would have to say, like, the more noticeable would be Zipster. You know, I mean, sometimes you have to tell them that the shot's not good. You know, it's like, I didn't hit you, you know, but I think his intentions are so good, you know. So I would have to say he's probably a good example of a clean fighter in our kingdom.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, and we are lucky. Everybody is pretty decent. You know, it's very rare you have somebody where you're like, you know, everybody has a moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. This has been super fun. Thanks for making me laugh. Starting the week out nice. Anyway, I really appreciate it. And
well, thank you. I mean, I think you're documenting something for the future when there's no STA. No. Take a drink. But you know, it is, I think what you're doing and a lot of other people, I mean, hey, I love listening to everybody's story. There's a lot of people you've talked to that I haven't had an opportunity to hear their past and their history. It's like, listen to Drake, you know, like I met Drake when he was king, and we were king in Australia, but we didn't get to talk much, but it was just like, oh yeah, that was the story. That's really cool. I mean, he did a lot of travel, did a lot of work, you know, and then you do solidify the fact of, hey, the one thing all these guys have in common, they went to practice a lot, they worked hard, they didn't just fight, they studied, you know. And I think a lot of people forget that until they want to do it and they're like, oh shit, this is how it's supposed to work. It's like, yeah, unfortunately it is.
Well, yeah, a lot of people try to dismiss it as like talent or you're genetically gifted, and even the people that are genetically gifted have put in the work.
Yeah. There's very rare do you not see somebody who's like, hey, you won 2 crowns. Yeah. How often do you practice? A lot. A ton lot. Seriously, not just goofing off, showing up with armor. You know, it's like anybody can own armor. Wearing it's the part that's hard.
And they love it. I mean, that's another, you know, thread. You've got to love it to put in that kind of work.
Yeah. You see the passion in every one of them. They're like, oh God, I love fighting. You know, it's like, that's the one hobby. I'm glad I do it because I would be terrible at bowling. You know, I would have to have a hobby.
Oh, okay. On that note, Wednesday, my sister and I are talking to Duke Deaton, who it should be super interesting. You know, not founding, but old school Atenvelt. So that should be fun.
Yeah, a lot of people, you know, newer people should watch. It's a very interesting little piece of Atenvelt history and perspective from a time when it started to grow into that pocket before it hit the giant upswing. You know?
And I think he knighted Trudy, so he knighted the first woman. So we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks again, and everybody, next time. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.